Today on the Rock Feed podcast, I am so honored to be joined by my next guest. I've been a fan of him for many years. You know him from Saliva and the countless hit songs that he has written over the years. The great Josey Scott. Josey, thank you so much for being here today on the podcast.
Man, thank you so much for having me, Brian. I've been a fan of yours for a long time as well, and I've looked forward to this for a minute.
Likewise, it's so great to have you. And so, having listened to you for many years, I have this curiosity about your career, about what got you into it. I like to take people back to the beginning. And so, for you, what were some of those bands that inspired you growing up that got you into music to begin with?
Well, I think it all started with my dad. My dad was a country gospel artist when I was a kid, and I played drums behind him starting at about 5 years old. And I didn't start singing until I was about 9 years old. And just AC/DC, Beastie Boys. Growing up in Memphis, I grew up around 3 6 Mafia, Run DMC, a rich heritage of blues and old rock and roll, like Elvis, obviously, and all the Sun Records stuff, like they say, home of the blues, birthplace of rock and roll. So, growing up in Memphis was like, I call it the Liverpool of the South, because it's kind of rich in heritage there. And, church had a lot to do with it because also growing up in the South, I'm a PK, I'm a preacher's kid. My dad was a preacher when I was a kid. And he passed away in 1997. And he was my biggest fan, man. He was our bus driver in Blackbone, my original band. And so we were more like brothers than we were father and son. And that was a really painful loss, was losing him, because he was my first rock star. He was the first rock star that I sort of worshipped, growing up. But yeah, like I said, AC/DC was a big influence on mine, because they had that four on the floor type sound, that I was so attracted to, being a drummer and eventually being a singer. And if you think about it, AC/DC was kind of the first rap rock band, the way their lyrics are placed and everything. And I was just always really into them. It was on my bucket list to play with AC/DC before it's over with. But Beastie Boys was a big influence. Like I said, 3 6 Mafia, 8 Ball, and MJG. Al Capone growing up there in Memphis was a big influence. And on the other side of that, we had Tora Tora was a huge band there in the 80s and 90s. Roxy Blue was another big band there, and Todd Poole was actually the original guy that jammed in the studio with us when we were putting Saliva together. When me and Wayne Sweeney was in this band called TNA, who was like the big unsigned glam band, or raunchy sort of Guns N' Roses style band there in Memphis in the late 80s, early 90s. And he was the greatest guitar player. Even back then, he was the greatest guitar player I'd ever seen. And he was, even though I spent years in Blackbone with other guitar players, I just dreamed of being in a band with Wayne Sweeney. He was so amazing just from the jump. And I used to sneak into bars to see him play. Like I got a fake ID, and he was a few years older than me, and I would sneak into clubs to see him play, like Rascals, and the Stage Stop was a big deal back in Memphis, back in Rock and Raleigh in Memphis back in the day. And I put together Blackbone in 1992, 93. And that's how me and Cristobaldo hooked up. Cristobaldo was in a band called Modern Immaturity. They were like this death metal, like punk rock band. And we used to go see them play. They were sort of like um, Motley Crue meets like Voivod or something, man. It was crazy. So he was on my bucket list for a rhythm guitar player. I always wanted to be in a band with Chris Baldo. And when he left Modern Immaturity, I, I got to bring him into the Blackbone situation with me. And we put out a little independent record there in Memphis and done about all we could do, but we had never been in a band together before and didn't know how to navigate the politics of being in a band. It's as you know, it's sort of like being in a 5-way marriage.
Right.
If you're not used to, if you're just a kid and you're not used to being married, you eventually have your first fight and then you have your first breakup, of course. And so when Blackbone, I call Blackbone boot camp for rock and roll for me back in the day. So when Blackbone sort of blew up in our face, I was like, I was like so angry, and I was like, I'm going to go back to Memphis and I'm going to go get all my favorite musicians out of all my favorite bands. And, I took all the lessons that I learned in Blackbone and sort of tried to apply them to Saliva. And I remember the bus ride home. My dad was driving the bus actually. And I when I knew that Blackbone was going to break up, I was trying to come up with a band name, and I was like, it's got to be something like Nirvana. Like everybody was into Nirvana back then. I was so into Nirvana, loved Nirvana so much. I was like, it's got to be a household word already. Like Nirvana means heaven. It's got to be something like, I don't know, like Saliva. And I just kept coming back to Saliva, that 3-syllable. And I was like, it's
what led the band at that time to kind of come apart, your first band?
Just being young, and we were out there banging it out in a van and trailer, because that's how you did it back in the day. We didn't have the internet, obviously, so we would just go play clubs and sleep on pool tables and play for bar tabs. And like Hollywood Undead says, we played to our 100 shows to our family and friends, and we did pretty good regionally, though. We played Little Rock, and being from Memphis, we played Little Rock. We played Nashville. We went up to Chicago and did some shows. We played Louisville. We would go down to like New Orleans and do shows, and we were doing pretty good there for a while. And we just couldn't keep it together. We sort of ran out of money, and when you run out of money, everybody's patience gets a little thin, especially when you're that young. And it just kind of blew up in our face after that.
And so, it's interesting to hear you're the son of a pastor, and you didn't have an experience that I think a lot of people have, where maybe sometimes if they come from a religious upbringing, maybe their parents are hesitant for them to get into rock, and that doesn't sound like something that you experienced. What was his reaction when you're like, hey, Dad, I think I want to join a band?
Well, he was always super supportive. Him and my mother as well were always super supportive of me, and they never. I was pretty lucky in that they never judged me, and I had problems with that, growing up, not knowing anything but church. Growing up, of course, you have one thing pulling you this way, but you have that guilt and that conscience, telling you, maybe you shouldn't be doing this, or should you be doing this? And, there's other people telling you this is the devil's music, and, things of that sort. But I never saw it as that. I knew I didn't worship the devil. I knew that it wasn't the devil's music for me. I talked about love and heartbreak and the human condition, and girls, and everything that I was going through in my 20s and 30s at that time. And my parents were just really supportive all the way through on that. And my dad, I remember one time I was having one of those bouts of conscience or bouts with guilt, and I was like, "Dad, am I doing the wrong thing?" And he said, "Son, you make it sin or not," and that always stuck with me. And I would experience plenty of sin coming on down the road, but um, that always stuck with me. And my parents were always super supportive back in the day. All
It's wonderful. Because it's not always the case, and it just sounds like you really had amazing parents. And so going on, you're feeling dejected, you're feeling like, hey, this band is over that I started, and then you come up with that name Saliva. You have an idea. How does Saliva come into fruition? Let's go right back to that moment. You come up with the name, and where do we go from there on this crazy rock and roll journey that you ended up having with this great band?
Man, I was still living with my mother at the time back in Memphis. I was I remember I was working at the Mall of Memphis during the day, working at Sam Goody record store, and I was working at night at this working the door at this famous strip club in Memphis back in the day called Platinum.
Awesome.
So um, I was just trying to pay my bills, and I had a son when I was 18 years old. So I had a son that I was trying to take care of and you know keep up child support payments on and you know so I had to make a move, when I came back to Memphis and the band had sort of blown up in our face, like I said earlier. And I just immediately went into songwriting mode. I locked myself in my bedroom at my mom's house and took this old cheap Goya uh, acoustic guitar that I had and just started to write, write, and write, and write, and write, and write. And I would just fill uh, notebooks of lyrics and ideas and sketches and sketches of songs. And once I got some things that I thought were really solid, I had I had like 25 or 30 ideas. It was crazy at the time. But I once I got some really solid ideas, then I started to reach out to all my favorite band members in Memphis, and Wayne Sweeney was number one on my wish list. So I hunted him down in town. He had just left TNA and had become the lead guitar player for a while of Roxy Blue when their lead guitar player had left and went to dental school. He was going to be and is now a famous dentist there in Memphis, Tennessee. So Wayne Sweeney was the lead guitarist for Roxy Blue for a while, and then him and Todd Poole, the singer, Todd was also a drummer, which I think is interesting because I think all great singers are also drummers. But he was jamming with Todd Poole in his basement, and Todd was playing drums, and he goes, "Well, why don't you come over and jam with us, and we'll see what comes of it." And I said, and I had hunted him down in the studio. Him and Todd had put together a little project called Sugar Ditch, and they were at Ardent Studios there in Memphis recording some tracks. And I came and just unrepentantly ran in on their session and broke out my little cheap acoustic guitar and started playing him ideas over in the corner. And Wayne was just so sweet and so kind. He didn't have a mean bone in his body, and he was like, "Yeah, man, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get it together." So he goes, like I said, he goes, "Why don't you come over to Todd's house? He's got a awesome basement with a PA and all the equipment we need, and we'll just start jamming some ideas." At first, just me and Wayne Sweeney and Todd Poole, and coming up with some ideas. And then I told the guys, I said, "Well, I'm kind of a package deal." I said, if you want me, I said, I want to bring in Chris DeBaldo too from the Blackbone Project, because me and him were like brothers. We were just a package deal, and I never wanted to lose that, what I call the two guitar player system, of having that good solid rhythm and also having that magical lead guitar player over the top of it, like Wayne Sweeney. And they're like, "That's cool, man. Bring him on in." And they knew who Chris DeBaldo was. Chris was kind of a famous Memphis musician as well. And and actually, the very next night, we got Dave Novotny showed up, because the bass player we had at the time was this cat named Matt Dees, who's a dear friend of Wayne Sweeney's. And he jammed with us for one night, and then he disappeared the next night, and old Dave Novotny showed up the very next day. So, and he wrote a song the first night he came to rehearsal. So we were like, "Oh yeah, this dude's in, man." So at that point it was me and Wayne Sweeney and Dave Novotny and Chris DeBaldo and Todd Poole. And then Todd had something going on in his personal life and had to step back from the band. And that's when I reached out to Paul Crosby. And Paul Crosby was leaving the music industry. He was like, Paul Crosby's one of those guys that's always got 2 or 3 businesses on the side burner that are just killing. And he never had to have a regular job or whatever, because he was just so good at business. And he had a heat and air business that was just exploding, man. He had more work than he could do, and he was leaving the music industry. He was done with the music industry, but he had been in a band there in Memphis called Mother Crush, that I had been to the Omni New Daisy on Beale Street where Saliva was signed, and seen Mother Crush several times. And I was like, I want that kid with the dreadlocks, man. That guy is awesome, man. We got to have that guy. And I went to his house, and I'll never forget. I went to his house and I spoke to his wife at the time, Lindy, God rest her soul. She passed away recently. And I had a conversation with her, and I said, "I know your husband's quitting the music industry." I said, "But if you will just trust me and let me borrow your husband for the next 6 months," I said, "if I can't get something going in the next 6 months to a year, just give me 6 months to a year." Notice I'm stretching it out more and more. And I said, "Just give me 6 months to a year. If we don't have anything going on, you can have him back, and I'll never ask again." I said, "Lindy, please let me have Paul Crosby for this project." And she was like, "Okay." She goes, "If it was anybody else, I would say hell no." She said, "But because it's you guys, I'll let this happen." And then that was it. We had the lineup.
So the lineup is formed at this point, and how long was it before you all started gaining traction as a band? What was the catalyst for you all ultimately getting signed?
Well, we were the mad songwriters. We just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And we had developed we were playing probably every other weekend somewhere. There was a big sort of network of clubs there around Memphis that we could rotate and not wear one place out, several times a month. So we were just playing in a circle there around the Memphis area of different clubs, and we had developed quite a following. And our fans were like, "Just go in the studio and put out anything. We just want to buy anything." Back in those days, you could record a CD on consignment, what they called consignment, and they give you like a spec deal at the local studios, which is a pretty hairy proposition back in those days. They give you a contract that was a notebook thick, and we didn't know all this language that was in these contracts. I don't think any artist does, but we were more than willing to do it, and so we signed a little spec deal with a little record label there in Memphis called Rockin' Chair Records. And we went into the studio and recorded. We did exactly what our fans wanted, and we recorded the Black Album, our first Saliva record, and we just called it Saliva, which is my son Justice, who's 19 years old. That's his favorite Saliva record. He goes, "Dad, it will never get more real and raw than that record right there." And so we recorded that record for our fans, and we put it on consignment and all the record stores. They had actual record stores back in those days. And, it sort of took off from there. And then we had two radio DJs there in Memphis who just believed in us. And they had this thing on Tuesday nights. They would have local musicians Tuesday night power hour, and they would play bands like Mother Crush and TNA and Tora songs and Roxy Blue songs. And then they said, and there's these new guys, Saliva, and they just kept spinning our record, and they particularly kept spinning Your Disease. They just kept spinning Your Disease, and the record, as far as we were concerned, had kind of took off, or a word we didn't know yet, had kind of gone viral there in Memphis, and kids were selling it out at the record stores, and we were having to restock. I was like, man, we're having to restock this in 2 or 3 different record stores. And we were just amazed that people wanted our stuff that bad. And that's when we started to get record company attention.
And so between Self-Titled in 97 and you have 2001 Every 6 Seconds, was Your Disease out prior to you getting signed? You had that as a song?
We had demoed that song up. We had demoed it up early on.
Massive song.
That's sort of the song that got us the deal, because we got turned down by everybody. We showcased for Atlantic Records for Jason Flom, the guy that signed Kid Rock. We showcased for Interscope Records. We showcased for Capitol Records, and they would fly us out, and we would get put up in this nice hotel, and we were like, oh my God, this is it, and then we would get our hearts broke every time and get sent back home. And
how do you land those? How do you land a showcase?
Well, we were sending out what we call press packets in those days. We were sending out a short bio of us, a couple of pictures, and we would throw the Black Album in a manila envelope and send it off to all these guys. And then they had something there in Memphis once a year called, it was sort of like our version of South by Southwest. And through playing, it was called Crossroads. And through playing Crossroads, we played the Omni New Daisy again. This place that Omni New Daisy on Beale Street would forever be involved in our career. For some reason, we kept coming back to that place. But we played Crossroads there in, I think it was around 95, 96, or I'm sorry, 96, 97. And we picked up Brian Coleman, our manager. And I had somebody tell me back in the day, they said, if somebody really wants to manage you, they're going to come up and say, look, if I can't do anything for you guys in a year or two, I'll manage you on a handshake. If I can't get nothing done, we'll go our separate ways, and that'll be that. And we finally had that guy come up to us, and that was Brian Coleman, who was at the time managing Oleander and Nickelback. And what
year was this?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, what year was that?
Oh, I want to say it was 97.
Wow.
Right around the time my pops passed away. And I remember we were showcasing for Atlantic Records when my dad passed, because the last phone call we shared was he was sort of coaching me up for the Atlantic Records showcase that was coming that Friday night. And that was on a Monday. And my dad was a truck driver. He was an 18-wheeler driver, and he was making his retirement run to Syracuse, New York. All he had to do was go to Syracuse, New York, turn around and come back to Memphis. And he had a heart attack in Syracuse, and we lost him. And that was the last time I talked to my dad, was about the Atlantic Records showcase.
Wow.
But yeah, that was Brian Coleman hit the ground running for us, man. And he, got our music in the right people's hands, like the Jason Flums and Capitol Records and Epic Records and Interscope Records, all those guys. And, even though they had did what they call passed, I began to hate that word because it was just like nails on a chalkboard to me, hearing that they wanted to pass or we pass. When and then after every label that you can think of, RCA, every label that you can think of came along. Island Def Jam came along, and everything just seemed different with them. And I remember being on the phone on a conference call with them and with Brian Coleman, and we had met Bob Marlette, who wanted to produce us. Brian Coleman had hooked us up with Bob Marlette to do the production. If there was going to be a first record, he wanted Bob Marlette, and we loved Bob. Instant best friends with Bob Marlette, all of us. And I remember being on the phone call with Island Def Jam, and the head of A&R at that time, he said, "We're going to fly you guys out to New York, and we're going to put you up in a hotel, and we're going to do a showcase here in New York." And I said, I just felt the hot flash come over me. And I said, no. I said, we don't want to do that. I said, we've done this with all the record labels. I said, we've come out and we've been put up in these nice hotel rooms. You guys rent out a place for us to play. And then we come down there and pour our hearts and souls out to you. And you guys fill a room full of suits that stand there with their arms folded just to tell us they passed. I said, that's not working for us. I said, I'll tell you what, though, if you come to Memphis, Tennessee, and let us sell out the Omni New Daisy on Beale Street, and we rock that house with 1,000 of our most rabid fans in that building, and we burn that building to the ground. And if you tell us no, then I said, I'll be able to live with myself. But until then, I said, we don't want to come to New York. And then there was this long, like 25, it felt like an eternity. It was probably like 7 seconds, but it felt like about 20 seconds. I swear it felt like an eternity. And I was like, oh my God, did I just freaking flush my career down the toilet? And I heard Leor Cohen's voice in the background say, that sounds good to me. He had this deep Israeli special forces type, Dolph Lundgren type accent. And he goes, that sounds good to me. He goes, we will come to Memphis, Josey. And I was like, I just breathed a deep breath of sigh. And then they ended up coming to Memphis, and that the rest is history after that. Everything began to snowball after that.
And so you get into the studio and you start at some point to work on Every 6 Seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm
saying first though, what were you featured on Hero with Nickelback around the same time?
No. That came later on. That was in between Every 6 Seconds and Back Into Your System, or close to Back Into Your System than Every 6 Seconds. But
so Every 6 Seconds, you get into the studio, you've got Your Disease. At this point, the band is signed. Some people for that, it's a real crossroad for them. Some people feel as though they've made it, they've arrived. Some people feel like the work is just beginning. Where were you at?
I was at the work is just beginning. Thank God I had enough people in my ear going, you're going to feel like, your whole life you've been programmed, especially in that day and age, you've been programmed that once you ink that deal, that you've made it, that it's all, gravy trains with biscuit wheels from that moment on. And luckily I had enough seasoned musicians in my ear going, but that's not where where it all gets easy. That's where it gets the hardest it will ever get in your life. And that's where you've really got to put your nose to the grindstone, and you've really got to focus and pour everything you've got into these songs. And luckily that's the route we went. Is Bob Marlette came down, and we did pre-production. We did like 2 weeks of pre-production first with Bob, and he went through our songs and tweaked this and tweaked that and made this better and showed us how to make this part go into this part better, and just taught us all these songwriting fundamentals that little guys from Memphis had never experienced quite yet, you know. And so once we got that downloaded into our brains, I was like, okay, I know what to do now. I know what I need to do now. And then I started to bring up older ideas that I had like greater than, less than, and ideas that I didn't want to fall by the wayside. And during pre-production. And then, so by the time we went to California, by the time we went to Los Angeles to do Every 6 Seconds, we were well prepared for that record, because Bob Marlette had whipped our ass into shape.
Were you able to, take that kind of really critical feedback on the music you had wrote? Was it, for some people, it's difficult to deal with at that level?
100%, man. I'm an old high school dropout from Memphis, Tennessee, dude. I was so grateful and thankful to even be in the room with these people, man. I was still getting over being grateful for just having Wayne Sweeney and just being in love with the guys that I was in, that I had literally my bucket list band that I'd always wanted, of strong Memphis musicians who didn't want to be hometown heroes for the rest of their life. They really wanted to go for the brass ring, that we were like-minded, and we were just in the honeymoon phase, man, the five of us. And so any kind of pressure we saw as a privilege.
Right. And so which was the first single that was released from this album that really took off for you?
Well, Your Disease, was on the Dracula 2000 soundtrack, and we, thought that was such a big deal. We knew they were going to release that as a first single, but we had no idea it was going to be on a major motion picture soundtrack. And so we were really excited about that. And that was the coolest thing about Island Def Jam. And William Morris, our agent at the time, would always get us involved in these extracurricular activities, like getting us in the right video game and getting us in the right movie soundtrack and getting us, involved in the right, whatever movie was coming out, or whatever hot video game was coming out, they were on it. You know what I mean? So to be involved in things like that, where little dreams come true, all, not just putting out a record, but getting to be involved with WWE. The relationship we developed with WWE was unreal, man. And we were so, like, every dream we'd ever dreamed at that point was starting to come true. And we were just grateful and thankful to be involved in stuff like that.
And so your hip hop influences really come out on Your Disease. And what was the reception like when that song came out? How did your life change after that became a single and did what it ended up doing? Well,
I can pinpoint the day. We were on tour with we were doing some shows with Nickelback, and I believe Disturbed was on it was sort of like a festival type atmosphere that we were playing in several different cities. And we were still in an RV. We're pulling a trailer, which we thought we were big time, being in an RV at that time. And I remember every day we would go walk out into the fair type atmosphere of the festival, and we'd get a corn dog and a margarita or something. Uh, one day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I'll never forget it. Me and Cristobaldo got off the bus, and I was like, "Hey, man, do you want to go get a corn dog and a funnel cake or something, and maybe a margarita or something at the fair type situation they got going on out there?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, let's go." And we went out there, and we're getting our grub on and everything. And I remember hearing these kids start whispering around us, and our video had just come out on MTV that week, but we didn't think anybody was going to notice because they played it at like 2 o'clock in the morning. They played it like once, maybe twice. So we didn't think that was going to necessarily get traction yet. But I remember hearing those little voices around us whispering, "Oh my God, I think that's blah, blah. Oh my God, I think that's blah, blah. Oh my God." And dude, and the fans just went, woo, like that. And we were we're standing there with our little margarita and a red Solo cup and a corn dog. And we're just like, "Oh my God, who's got a Sharpie?" You know what I mean? So, and we stood there for hours just signing stuff and hanging out with the fans. And that was when everything changed right then. And we loved every second of it.
And you were in this interesting situation because you're doing shows with Nickelback, you're doing shows with Disturbed, you're in Saliva. All of these bands at this point are just kind of in a more formative stage. And what was the atmosphere like on that tour with all three of these bands that would in short order go on to become massive staples in rock music?
Dude, it was just so fresh and so new. Not just our music and our experience, but those guys as well. We became friends with the guys in Disturbed. We became dear friends with the guys in Drowning Pool. Became friends with obviously Chad and the guys in Nickelback. And it was just amazing to watch, this guy's song would blow up, and then this band's song would blow up, and then this band over here's, a trust company. We were playing with them, and their song blew up, and then we would do a show with Chevelle, and they were blowing up, and we were just like, "What is happening, dude? What is?" It was like in the water, dude. It was just rock and roll was just it was just like a steamroller back then, dude. Everything was on fire.
And how did your life change once that fame and success starts rolling in, all of the record sales, the big shows? How does that affect your life? How do you adjust? Or, was it overwhelming? Like how did it affect your life?
Well, I was still, like I said, I was still living at home. I like I said earlier, I'm just a high school dropout from Memphis, Tennessee, and I had to learn how to deal with large amounts of money. And I mean, I was a hustler from the time I was a young teenager, and I had thousands of dollars before, but I'd never had $100,000 dropped in my lap at one time. And I've always said they had a class at Island Def Jam to teach you how to deal with the press. And I always said they ought to have a class to teach you how to deal with fame and money, because at that young age, you can come apart at the damn end of the runway before you get your shit together, and it changed immensely, Brian. Like I had to, I bought a house. I didn't even have a car. I was basically using my girlfriend's car at the time, and like I said, living with my mom, and my girlfriend at the time was like excellent at credit scores and all that stuff. So she sort of gave me the hit the ground running crash course in your credit score and how all that worked and everything. And, I had to figure out having a business manager and what that meant. I just thought you had a manager, somebody that managed your career. I didn't know you had a business manager that managed just your money. We called him Daddy. We would call him and be like, "Hey, can I get A, B, and C?" And he'd be like, "Well, maybe next week you can get that." You know what I mean? And we would sort of ask permission. But yeah, I bought when I did the MTV Cribs for the first time. I didn't even have cars. I called all my best friends at car lots and I was like, "Do you guys have any cool cars? Will you bring over a couple of cool cars? I don't even have a car." And thank God I had a couple of friends that brought over a couple of hot rods, and I just sort of parked them out in my driveway or whatever. Not really claiming they were mine, but just claiming these are my friends and they're cool cars.
Right.
Because like I said, I didn't even have wheels at the time. I was still learning how to manage money and how to, go finance a car and how to buy a home and all that entailed. So yeah, it changed my life in ways that I was never the same. Things were never the same. I was able to take care of my son in a way that I'd never been able to do. I was able to take him shopping and buy him a whole new wardrobe and buy him a new bedroom suit. I bought his mother a new car to take him to school. And, it was like just an amazing, amazing time.
And so the band at this point is going crazy. You guys have Your Disease on that album. What was the next single that came out after that?
Well, a cool story is we had the whole Every 6 Seconds record in the can, and we had come home from Los Angeles back to Memphis, and like I said, still living at my mom's, still in my bedroom at my mom's house, and I had taken, I couldn't sleep one night, and I told my mom, I was like, "I can't sleep. I don't know what's going on. I'm an insomniac now." But she goes, "I got this new stuff called Ambien." She goes, "Try one of those and see if you can see if that'll help you rest." So I took this Ambien, and of course it didn't help me sleep, but I laid down on the bed and I started writing. I started playing drums on my chest, and I started writing this riff, and I was like, I get and then I had watched an episode of CSI that night, and the guy they were investigating was, in the sort of, he was in the interrogation room, and they had the lamp down in his face, and he was supposed to like blow up this football stadium or something like that, or he had a bomb or something. And he goes, "The next sound you hear is click, click, boom." And I was,
"Wow,
what is that?" And I sat down and I got that little cheap guitar out that I got from my girlfriend, and I was like, click, click, boom, I'm coming down on the stereo, hear me on the radio. Click, click, boom, I'm coming down with the new style, like it's buck blah. Like that was all one piece. It was
wow."
like Elvis says, "I don't believe it comes from me. I believe it's through me." I just have the best seat in the house. I got chills, man.
Wow.
But that was all one big piece that came out. And it's just as fast as I could write it down, Brian, I wrote that song down. And I called Julie Greenwald, the vice president of Island Def Jam, the next morning, as soon as she got to the office. And I said, "Hey, I think I might have something here." And I knew that I probably needed to call one of you guys. And I think I have a great idea. I said, "I know the album's over and we've come home and the studio sessions are over and everything." I said, "But I think I might have something here. She goes, well, sing it to me. And I was like, what? She goes, no. And I had this like one of those big red brick Nokia phones from back in the day. It was like, I swear it was as big as my Yeti. And I, all I knew to do was play drums with my fingers and hum it into the phone. So I did just like I did for you just now. I was like, click, click, boom, I'm coming down on the stereo. Hear me on the radio. Click, click, boom, I'm coming down with a new style. You know it's buck wild. She goes, pack a bag, get on a plane. She goes, there'll be a plane ticket waiting on you at Memphis International Airport. It's no problem. We're going to bring you back out. You're going to record that song, and then we'll talk further. And I was like, oh, this must be really special. Like it's given her, I hope it's given her the chills like it's given me the chills. So next thing you know, I was back in Bob Marlette's little garage studio, man, and we were recording Click, Click, Boom. And that ended up being the second single on Every 6 Seconds.
I remember when that came out, and I remember when Your Disease came out, and it was amazing to see kind of the Click, Click, Boom, how massive of a song. I mean, over 300 million streams on Spotify. Very few acts are able to do that. This album, to this day, is a record that I still listen to all the time, and to see kind of what it went on to do and what it still goes on to do is amazing. And so you put that out in 2001, and it has all of this success. And, some people are going to go into they're going to go into a 2-year album cycle, and you have an album out about a year later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so what was the thought process there? Like, let's just put another one right out. Let's put an album out a year later.
Well, I had always been very wary of the sophomore jinx.
Right.
I was just obsessed with getting caught in that sophomore jinx. And Leor Cohen had told me one time, he goes, Josey, you've had your whole life to write your first record. He goes, you have 6 weeks to write your second record.
Right.
And I was like, so I was feeling the weight of that, and I was just really, again, the mad songwriter, just writing my head off and trying to get together as many ideas as I could. And they were coming, they were flowing at that. I don't know what it was at that point. I was just dialed in with whatever magical thing is above us in the universe that was just downloading those songs into my head, man. And as soon as I was able to get in the studio with Bob Marlette, me and Bob have always had an electricity together, and we all contributed to those songs. I don't want to not give credit where credit's due. But as far as the first single for Back Into Your System, I thought Back Into Your System, the song, was going to be the first single because I loved that song. I was just so into that song. And they were like, the record company was like, no, we want another one. So we want another first single. And I was like, oh God, just pulling my hair out trying to come up with that idea. And me and Bob Marlette sat in the studio together one night and just put our heads together. And he had that sort of the phrasing for, he goes, I don't know. He goes, I keep hearing this thing going, and I was like, I just naturally, without even trying, went, always, always, I just can't live without you. I love you, I hate you, I can't get around you. I breathe you, I taste you, I can't live without you. I just can't take it anymore. And it just all came out at one time, Brian. And as fast as we could write it down and as fast as I could hum it into something, we jumped in the studio and got that laid down.
Always is maybe my favorite song by you guys, and just a monster hit. And to do that on the second, the second big signed album, after striking a deal and having that hit, and then this is where you're starting to get into, hey, we have a lot of discography here that we're starting to put together. We don't just have one hit. We don't have just two hits. We have at this point several hits across multiple albums. And then we know that you would continue. I mean, that early 2000s era and rock music, anybody could say, oh, well, the technology's changed. It's gotten harder to get more. But the songs were different too. I mean, these were really quality songs that always is just a very well crafted, incredibly catchy song, that really still holds up to this day. And so you have the success on the second album, and you guys have to have been incredibly busy. I mean, you've got to be touring in support of these songs, playing a lot of shows. And I'm guessing at that point, anytime you had off, you must have been working on original music.
Yeah, 100%. To be able to exhale after we knew always was going to be, we knew everything was going to be okay, because after you catch that butterfly, you're just so afraid you're going to squash its wings, and you're so afraid you're going to hurt it, and you're just trying to be gentle with it, but yet hold it at the same time. And there's just all these fundamentals that are coming into play. And I think as artists and musicians, we're our own worst critics. You start to second guess yourself, and you start to go, well, am I really supposed to be here? Was Click Click Boom just a fluke, or can I do it again? Is it possible that lightning can strike twice? Can I possibly make this happen one more time? And like I said, having Leor in your ear at the same time going, you've had your whole life to write your first record. You got 6 weeks to write your second one, and we want it yesterday. And, but at that time in my life, I just loved pressure. I felt pressure was such a privilege, because I was so thankful and grateful, Brian, to be there. And still to this day, I'm so thankful and grateful to be a part of the music industry, just to have someone look at me and say that my music has had some kind of effect on their life. And I'll never forget, this girl came up to me one night. We were signing autographs after a show, and she said, I just want you to know that always kept the shotgun out of my mouth.
Wow.
And I just held her and cried with her, because it touched me so deeply. And then I could hear my dad talking to me from the grave saying, you're supposed to be here. This is what you're supposed to do. This is your ministry. And I was like, but Dad, I'm not a minister. He goes, you're going to be a minister of something. Just because you're a minister doesn't mean you're a preacher. He goes, you're going to be a minister of something. And he goes, and this is your calling, son. And I just remember feeling so thankful and so validated that I was able to reach out and touch someone's life in a positive way, beyond record sales and beyond making money or beyond fame or fortune or any of that. I wanted to touch people with my music. That was the point. That was the reason I got up in the morning, was I wanted to touch people deeply with my music, like music had touched me. Like the first time I had heard Back in Black, or the first time I had heard Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, or the first time I had heard this music that even Hank Williams growing up, or Merle Haggard, or George Jones, or from country to hip hop, to just music itself. My dad used to say, son, there's two kinds of music in this world. There's good music and there's bad music.
Yes.
And just to be afforded the opportunity to touch people in their soul in such a deep way was everything to me.
So, in between, maybe before every 6 or after every 6 seconds, and then in between that and Back to Your System, we have this really iconic song that comes out. At this time, your career's taken over, you guys are blowing up, and then you go on a little side quest and you end up having this incredible, I would suggest absolutely one of the top three, top four, strongest action movie ballads, if you will, of all time, up there with Kiss from a Rose and Batman. I'm talking about, there's just something about those action film ballads. And Hero, the first time I heard that song, I mean, I remember I went and saw this movie in theaters, and the first time I heard it, I was just astonished. Like, man, this song, it just is such a hit. How did that song come together? And what was the response to that? Like, now you're doing things outside of Saliva that are having this massive impact. And that song to this day is still so loved and appreciated.
Thank you, Brian. And I saw a video of you on YouTube singing that song.
Yeah.
And I was floating on a cloud for like a week. And I told my wife, I said, Brian from Rock Feed is singing my song. I cannot believe this, man.
Shout out to Matt and everybody who was a part of that, because they're going to be so happy to hear that from you, because we just love that song so much. I love that song to this day. I listen to it all the time. It's just out of this world good. So, how does that even come together to be in this still iconic Spider-Man film? As you see behind you, I mean, what a plaque to have on the wall. That's crazy, man. I mean, not many people got something like that.
Dude, since I was 7, 8 years old, I had Spider-Man stuff in my room, and 53 years old, I've still got Spider-Man stuff in my room. And I love every second of it, man. But again, I have to give credit to Leor Cohen and his vision of what he saw for this band. I think, Leor had discovered the Beastie Boys. He had discovered Run DMC. He had developed such a hip hop dominating presence at Island Def Jam. And, he was the one that re-signed Mariah Carey, and he had Ashanti and all these amazing artists, just a amazing laundry list of artists. And I think, looking back, I think he was ready to prove the same thing in the rock world, and we just happened to be there for that ride. And now I know why. Now I know why God held us out for all those no's, for all those times we heard that word pass, for all those times we heard the word you can't, or you're not good enough, or we're going to go with this, we're going to go with these guys, or maybe you guys can go back and maybe in a few years, but we're going to pass for now. I had heard those words until they had just burned cigarette holes in my heart. And to get on board with someone who believed in us so completely, like Leor Cohen, was just a blessing. And that was his idea. He said, he called me on the road and he said, Josey, he said, I know you're managed by Brian Coleman. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, we want to get Brian Coleman's other best man, and I will put him with my best man. And he goes, and we want to see what you can do for. He didn't say Spider-Man at the time. He just said a movie soundtrack, and we went up to. He goes, will you go up to Vancouver and meet with Chad Kroeger? And me and Chad were dear friends because we had toured the United States together. We had toured Europe together. We went to Dachau together, to the concentration camps. We'd had all these moving, unbelievable experiences with each other over in Europe, on stage and off. And so me and Chad were dear friends. And I was like, yes, of course. I'd love to go to Vancouver. I've never been to Vancouver. I'm an old country boy, and I'd love to see what Vancouver's about. And he goes, well, I want you to go up there. And he goes, I want you to get in a room with Chad Kroeger, and let's just see what happens. And I was like, bet, let's do it. I'm here for it, as the kids say today. And I remember going up to Vancouver, and Chad picked me up at the airport. And Chad, if you know him, is the best host of any place that he ever takes you to. And that was his hometown. He grew up in and around Vancouver, and just was the most grand host ever. I got to meet the guys in Theory of a Dead Man, who were up and coming artists at that time, and was just blown away by them in the studio. And I met Default, who are another big Canadian band who were up and comers at that time, and was just blown away by them as well. And got in the studio that night with Chad, and Chad wanted to do the original idea that we kicked around was he goes, maybe we can do like another Click Click Boom. And I said, I'm not opposed to that. I said, but I've kind of done that. And I said, I want to continue to sort of stretch my legs as a songwriter. I want to continue to challenge myself. And I said, let's just throw something out there. And he goes, I got this one thing. He goes, the guys don't think it's a Nickelback song. And I said, well, play it for me. And that night he played me, what he had of Hero, which was pretty much the whole thing. And I remember just sitting there, and I was like, and when he stopped, I said, so your guys say this is not a Nickelback song? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, that's a me and you song, damn it. That song. And and then we ran through it a couple of more times, and we sort of laid out the harmonies together, and sort of mapped out the meat and potatoes of what Hero was going to be. And we practiced it. And then I remember opening the door. I reached behind me and opened the door to the studio, and I yelled for Rob Stevenson, our A&R guy. And I said, Rob, get in here. You're not going to believe this shit. So he came in there, and I had to calm myself down. I had to do some breaths and calm myself down, because I knew it was a really special moment. I knew it was a really special song, and
immediately you had to know.
Immediately. And so we played that song for them, and they, record company guys, they always try to keep their poker face, and they kind of looked at each other, and they looked back at us, and they were like, that's pretty good. And I was like, pretty good. I was like, this is awesome, dog. I was like, this is incredible, man. This song is incredible. So we recorded it. We recorded the demo for it that night, the official demo. And then about, I think 2 or 3 weeks later, because I was on tour, I had to go back to the Saliva tour. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, I came back to Vancouver. We officially recorded the real deal Holyfield version of it. And then Matt Cameron came down to play drums on it. Freaking out. I had been a Matt Cameron fan since Soundgarden was opening for Skid Row, back in the day, back in the late 80s, early 90s. And just to see him come in and watch him work. And I got there really early that morning, a lot earlier than any of the other guys. And I was watching because I wanted to just see and do and experience, and I saw this older gentleman out there putting together Matt's drums. And I went out there and I struck up a conversation with him, and we started to talk about Slingerland drums, were the drums he was putting together. And I said, do you work with Matt? And he said, yeah. He goes, I'm Matt's drum tech for the Hero recording. He goes, this is going to be a really special kit. He goes, we brought this down from the such and such warehouse, and this is like a vintage this and it's priceless that. And he was putting together all these, and me being a drummer too, I was just like drooling on myself looking at this amazing vintage Slingerland kit he's putting together. And then the old man gets up and leaves. And I went back into the studio, and I was, of course, bebopping around going, yeah, I just sat out there with Matt's drum tech, and we were talking, and he goes, Chad Kroger looks over at me. He goes, you know who that is, don't you? And I said, who? He goes, that's Mr. Slingerland. I said, excuse me? He goes, yeah, that's Mr. Slingerland. And I was like, oh my God, I felt like such a dork with the man that, had brought his own drums down to put together for Matt Cameron to play. And Matt came in, and Brian, dude, watching this guy play, he listened to the song 3 times, and then he did 3 different runs, and he did that beautiful drum roll right at the beginning of that. And I was just like, wow, holy shit, dude. And like I said, did 3 passes at it. And I remember he came back in the studio, and Chad made some kind of joke. He goes, yeah, it's pretty good there, Matt. Matt looked at us. He goes, yeah, they call me Shoddy McWorkmanship. I was in dreamland, dude, watching these people converse about this song. And then we were going to do the video a couple of days later.
The video is great.
Do what?
The video is great. I love the video.
I love the video too. They were having to build the set inside an airplane hangar, which that's what was taking a couple of days. And so we had to stay there in Vancouver for an extra couple of days. And Matt had to leave because his wife went into labor back in Seattle. So he flew out that night, and we had to find a drummer to be in the video. So they called up Our Lady Peace and got the drummer from Our Lady Peace to come play drums. And then we were supposed to get we were supposed to get Jerry Cantrell to come play lead in the video, and something fell through and he didn't get to make it. So we got the singer for Theory of a Dead Man to come in and play that role in the video. So we kind of threw this hodgepodge together, and Chad's brother was playing bass in the video. So we just threw this hodgepodge band together and filmed the video the next couple of days. And that was a magical experience too, man. The director would come up and he goes, he was this English guy, and he goes, I need you to imagine you're seeing Spider-Man fly around. He goes, see where all these green screens are? He goes, that's where Spider-Man is flying around. He goes, you have to act like you're seeing him fly around. So I'm looking up and around and trying to keep my hair out of my eyes at the same time. And it was just magical, dude. Just a magical, magical time.
When that song comes out, I mean, that was just crazy. What did your bandmates think of that? Was there any sort of like, oh, he's going solo? Was it, what was the reception to that?
It was kind of mixed. It was kind of a mixed bag. I think they were concerned about me doing anything out on my own. But I reassured them immediately. I was like, dude, you're a singer. First of all, that my loyalties are to y'all. We were like a gang, like most bands say. We were a brotherhood and a gang, and I was like, dude, I'm yours first and foremost. I'm just doing this to better what we have and to create more opportunities for us. And that's the way I always saw that. I didn't see it as sort of stepping out of my lane at all. I wanted to continue to create more opportunities for us and to move onward and upward, Right. And so that's how that went. And I ended up taking some time off. And I remember about 3 weeks later, I was in New York City walking down the street, and this kid came up to me and he goes, Spider-Man. And I said, what? I said, what do you mean? He goes, the Spider-Man song. He goes, you're in the Spider-Man song. And I said, you're talking about the Hero song. And by the time I got back to the record company, they were releasing that as the first single on the Spider-Man soundtrack, which we were told that the first single was going to be a Sum 41 song. And so I just thought it was going to be another track on that album, but Sony had stopped production of the Spider-Man soundtrack and sort of backed up and put Hero on the lead single position, I guess, and re-released it. And I was like, wow. At that point, I was like, the shit's about to hit the fan, bro.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And so the Spider-Man song comes out. You've got 2 records out around this time as well. Where do you go from there? Because then you have your next album, Survival of the Sickest. Survival of the Sickest, absolute banger. Another album with hits on it. Where are you at this point in your career? Where, you know, are you guys still riding high? Is it, you know, is there any point where you get like exhausted because you're just going balls to the wall nonstop?
Well, we had started to, how do I put this? We had started to enjoy ourselves a little too much out there, you know, and we had never, like I said, Brian, we'd never had that much money and success and just everything all at once thrown at us and from so many different directions, and we were just trying to drink it all and do it all and, you know, smell it all, taste it all, you know, and we kind of got under the wheels of that after a while, and I had to step back and get my shit together. You know, all of us did, really. But I don't want to speak for anybody else but myself. Holding myself accountable, you know, that was my first experience with knowing that I was going to have to be really cognizant of drugs and alcohol, that I was really going to have to take that seriously and not find myself under the wheels of that bus, no pun intended, to my own detriment. You know, I didn't want to kill this beautiful thing that we had built with something so silly as drugs and alcohol. So I began to take seriously getting myself cleaned up and getting sober. At the time, I think I was still in that, what they call the pink cloud of, well, I just need to chill for a minute. You know, I'll be fine. I'm not really an alcoholic, or I'm not really a drug addict. I just need to chill for a minute, and then I'll get my bearings back, and I'm good. You know, I'll be all good. And that just, you know, that ultimately that wouldn't be the case for me. So we started to not come apart at the seams, but it just got really crazy, man. It just, the kind of crazy we weren't ready for, I guess, is the way to put it.
And so you guys have, I'm trying to see, Ladies and Gentlemen comes out. Mm-hmm. And this song, another massive hit. This is 2007 at this point, approximately. And if I remember correctly, you guys at this point have a very good relationship with WWE. We got to talk about the Batista theme song, bro.
Yeah.
That was cool. One of the greatest entrances in WWE, one of the most over the top, you know, like iconic. What was that like to be a part of, and how did that come together?
Well, we had,
by the way, I just got to take a moment for myself here, because anytime I ever made a create a character on WWE games, that was always my theme song. And I just need to tell you that right now. Every single time, that was my theme song. There was never another theme song for me.
Hell yeah. I appreciate that so much. We had been really fortunate and blessed to work um, with the WWE, and Jim Johnson
A legend.
was their main music guy at that time, and had he had written the intro music for Stone Cold, and uh, all these great wrestlers and I grew up in Memphis, man, where there were three kings when we were growing up. There was Jesus, Elvis, and Jerry Lawler. Very uh, astute in the wrestling business. Growing up, they had TV5 wrestling every Saturday morning at the local TV station, and Monday night wrestling every Monday night at the Coliseum there in Memphis. So it was a dream come true for us to be involved in the WWE. And it started out, they sort of got our feet wet with the Dudley Boys. We were allowed to write Get the Tables, which was the Dudley Boys theme song. And then after that, they said, do you want to write another intro song for a wrestler? And I was like, does a fat baby poot? Hell yeah. Hell yes. I'm here for it, man. And we got to go in and write Y2J's theme song. Wow. And after that, we got to go in and meet Batista, and we were playing WrestleMania. I think it was WrestleMania 18, and we were there with Drowning Pool. I'll never forget getting to hang out with getting to meet David and getting to hang out with those guys, and getting to meet Batista, and him sort of telling us kind of what he wanted or what he was thinking about for his theme song. And then while I was in LA, I just went in the studio with Bob, and we sort of demoed a song up together. Or I'm sorry, not with Bob. I got in the studio there in LA with Jim, and did the sort of nuts and bolts of that song for Batista, and I was able to finish the vocals and everything on it, and got to hear it mixed down. And Jim is just the best mixer, and like
what's it like working with him? A true icon of pro wrestling.
Dude, what you said, a true icon, just has the best guitar tones and the best equipment at that time that we'd ever seen in our lives, and just to get to work with him. And he was so open, no ego, no no kind of attitude, just wanted us to be involved as much as we were willing to be involved, and wanted to spend as much time on it as we had the time to spend. And just a totally welcoming relationship with the WWE from start to finish, man. They brought us up to Connecticut to the main offices, and we got to tour the main offices. And I remember getting to go in and hear the guy that does all the movie trailers back in, or I guess it was back in the early to mid 2000s. He was like, in a word, and he was doing the Monday Night Raw commercials. And I went in the studio and I kept hearing his voice, and I was like, well, what booth is he in? They were like, oh, he ain't in no booth, dog. He's at home. He's big time. He's got a mic in his little studio. We just feed him the lines, and he goes in and spits it into the microphone. And they had the studio linked up, which was a big deal back then.
Right.
They just sort of almost like an early version of FaceTime.
Right.
They linked him up and had him record it right then and there from his home.
Wow.
And getting to watch that process was a big deal for me. And dude, getting to hang out with Jim was just craziness. I love him.
And kind of, you've been included in from video games to action movies to having true bona fide rock and roll massive success all the way across the board, but not just doing it through Saliva, but doing it as a solo artist, doing it in the I mean, you've got Hero, but you've also got the Batista theme song, which I would say is one of the better themes in wrestling, one of the better overall entrances as a longtime wrestling fan. And so, ladies and gentlemen, after this, fast forward, you've got you're doing 2 more albums after that, and at some point you end up leaving the band. And where were you at that point? I remember there were all kinds of rumors. He's going into ministry. He's doing this. He's doing that. You don't know what to believe. You don't know what to hear. Where were you at that point? And what was it like walking away from something that meant so much to you?
At that time, they the people that were managing the band at the time had said I had told them that I was going to need to leave the band or step away from the band until I could get myself straightened out. I was in a really dark place, and I had fallen back under the wheels of the party out there, the never ending party. And I had just gotten really unhealthy. I'd put on a bunch of weight and was just really in a bad mental health place. And I was had a little, my son's 19 now. He was 6 years old at the time. Justice, my son, was at home, and he was having a lot of separation anxiety from me going on the road. My son Cody, who was about to graduate high school, he was having a lot of separation anxiety from me going on the road. And I was just starting to count the cost of the career that I had. And I was like, if I don't do something, I'm going to die. And what's it? I don't want to leave my children here to fend for themselves without a father, and, I had just really come to the point in my life where I was going to have to put up or shut up. My wife was pregnant with our second child. And me and Kendra have been together for 21 years now. And we were pregnant with our first daughter, second child. And she had been born with, she had aspirated amniotic fluid when she was born, and was born with double lower lobe pneumonia. And they thought her lungs were bleeding at the time, and they didn't think she was going to make it.
Oh my God.
And that was just sort of the final sign for me, man. We were playing a show in Nashville at the time. And we were rehearsing for some shows that were coming up in Nashville at the time. And that's when Jordan, our second child, first daughter, was born, and she had those complications, and they told us that they didn't think she was going to make it. And that was just the sobering moment looking back that I needed. But at the time I thought that was going to be the end of the world for me, man, because I couldn't have imagined losing one of my children. They told us that they didn't think she was going to make it. And that's when I had to come to the guys and be like, look, I've got to step away. I've got to take care of myself. I've got to take care of my wife. I've got to take care of my children, and I've got to figure out what the hell's going on, man, because my life is about to fall apart at the seams. And so I, let the guys know that I was going to step away, and never left the hospital. So they were like, what should we tell the press? And I was like, I don't care what you tell them. I'm really focused on my family right now. I don't want to lose my little girl. I don't care what you tell them. And that was basically how we ended that conversation. And that's when they told the press, he's possibly going to do a career in Christian music, which, like I said before, I had always been a Christian. I had always had faith like themes in my music. I had always talked about everything from the human condition to heartbreak to women to cars to, whatever was the subject matter, whatever was on my heart was what I shared. I couldn't help but share that. And so that's where we kind of parted ways, and that's how that rumor got started or whatever. But I just had to take care of myself and take care of my family at that time, Brian.
And so at this point, you guys are apart for years. And were you completely out of the music industry? Did how long were you gone from performing at that time?
I was done performing for quite a while because I had needed to get my side of the street cleaned back up and needed to get my life together. Like I said, I was going to die, and I wanted to work on myself. I wanted to work on my marriage, and I wanted to work on my family because I was about to lose all three. And I didn't want that to happen because even to this day, the most important thing in my life is my family and my faith and my children and my wife of 21 years. I that's what brings me true happiness besides the music is the love of my life, and the other love of my life is my children.
Right. And so I remember, I think where I saw you kind of coming back that's present in mind, at some point you link up with the guys in Saliva again. I was there for this, and you guys performed together at Blue Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that? It seemed like such a great experience. Everything seemed to have gone great at that. It was an amazing performance. And I want to commend you because you are in great shape. You got yourself back in great shape. And I just want to especially commend you because it's hard recognizing that you need to get your life on track, recognizing that you need to get clean, acknowledging your faults, working on them. And you look great. You sound great. I've seen videos of you performing. And that's not easy, man. So I really have so much respect for you for that. And I was there. I remember you get up on stage with them. How does that come together? Because that's where things were really harmonious, it seemed, at that time.
Yeah, Wayne Sweeney called me about 6 months before that Blue Ridge show, and he goes, "Hey, do you possibly want to get up and do the encore with us at Blue Ridge?" And I was like, "Well, of course, yeah, absolutely." And he was like, "Well, this is the date, and this is when it is," and that's what sort of gave me the kick in the ass that I needed to get up to get myself off the couch and get back in the gym full time and really start taking my health as far as getting back in shape. I had been sober for years and years, but I wanted to get my body back in shape, and I had 6 months, like that little 6-month window to do it. So I just went full hard at it, getting back in shape for Blue Ridge, and it was magical, man. Getting to spend that time on stage with Wayne Sweeney again was just a dream come true all over again, man. And I had no idea it was going to be the last time. Nobody ever thinks it's going to be the last show or the last opportunity that you get with that person. But I'm so glad that we got to do that together.
And so after that time, I think from my standpoint, I'm like, oh man, could we see Josey return to Saliva? I would love to see that. I think it's amazing. And do things stall out? I mean, what ends up happening in that situation?
Well, honestly, Brian, we talked about doing a reunion tour. We talked about getting Chris DeBaldo back in the mix, the original guitar player, and of course Paul Crosby and Dave Novotny, and me and Wayne Sweeney, and we just never were able to get it together for some reason. And I don't want to shift the blame to someone else, but the only bugaboo, if you will, that I kept seeing in the reunion tour was Bobby he wanted to play keyboards, and he wanted to do this. He wanted to play drums at one point on stage, and I was just like, well, how is that a reunion tour? Like, I thought we were talking about this being the 5 original guys doing some select dates or whatever that, of course, back in Memphis and maybe some select cities. I thought it was just going to be the 5 original guys. Nothing against Bobby, I just thought it was supposed to be about the original 5 guys. And that just didn't seem like it was. It didn't seem like it was going to happen without Bobby's involvement, because I think over the years I don't know what he did, but he had his fingers in all the pies. Like, he was the business manager, he was the money manager, he was the road manager, he was booking the shows, he was doing all this stuff, and he just wasn't willing to let go of those reins in no kind of way, for us to even do for the meantime, not permanent, just for a window of time, to do a reunion tour. So that kind of fell apart. And after that, COVID hit. And then after that, my son passed away. And that was just one of the most excruciating things any parent can ever go through. I would never wish that on my worst enemy, to lose a child, man. That's just, there's no other pain in the world that I can describe to you is like losing one of your babies. And my 29-year-old son, Cody, lost his battle with COVID. It killed him in 12 days. It's not even like he was in the hospital for months and months, or, he kind of came back or got worse or whatever. He was just sick, in the hospital, gone. And I was just devastated after that, and sort of went into, was trying not to go back into a deep, dark depression and mental health space. And I had learned enough fundamentals from being sober for so many years to sort of keep myself from going there. I never was, I never had the temptation of going back to drugs and alcohol. That was never a temptation for me, because I had really fought for the sober life that I had built thus far, and I didn't want to give up that ground, because I had lost a child, because then my family would not only lose that child, but they'd lose me too. And that wasn't fair to my other children or my wife either. And so I just, went into that mourning period, and it still, to this day, it's the first thing I think about when I wake up, and it's the last thing I think about when I go to sleep, is my Cody, and then after that, that's when Wayne called me and said, "Hey, do you want to possibly come out and do the encore at Blue Ridge?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I think I could do that." Because I had a dream. I was gonna just not do music anymore. I thought, maybe that was something trying to tell me that maybe I didn't need to do music or something. I was thinking crazy stuff, just thinking all kinds of, the mind will tell itself crazy things when you're going through such a period of mourning and just black, dark depression and anxiety and losing a child. And I had a dream one night that I was laying on the canvas of this boxing ring, and I had blood running out my nose, and I had these boxing gloves on. And I remember I was in a laying down position looking at my hands, and I was touching my nose going, I'm bleeding. Like, what is happening? What is happening in this dream? And I felt something grab me by my collar and pull me back. And I heard, Dad, Dad, you got to get up. You got to get up, man. You got to get up. And I thought to myself, that's Cody. And then I could feel his breath in my ear. And I went, that is Cody. And I tried to turn around to see him. And I saw like a split second of his face. And then I woke up. But I knew I knew when I woke up from that dream that was my son telling me, you got to get back up, Dad. And you got to get back in the ring. And you got to bring this music to the people that love it so much, because somebody out there needs to hear these songs one more time. There could be one person out there that needs to hear these songs one more time. And if that's all it's worth, then go do that for that person. And that was all I needed to hear.
Man, I am so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And the courage and the strength and the resilience that you show. And I mean, that entire perspective that you have there is couldn't be better. Showing up for your family, being that rock that they need as well in that. And so many people, after going through something like that, you could just fall back on old habits and throw in the towel, and that's man, I'm at a loss for words. And I am so sorry. I'm so sorry you went through that and your family went through that, because that is just absolutely heartbreaking. I'm sitting here trying not to cry, Josey. And so you come back through all of that adversity, through all of that hardship, all of that pain. You could have stopped. You get up on stage again. You have this triumphant moment at Blue Ridge. You reunite with Saliva, and the band keeps going. There's all this talk maybe about the reunification of you guys getting back together. And, I have Bobby on recently.
Mm-hmm.
There's this sort of back and forth exchange. You mentioned something in an interview. He says stuff. I'm guessing there's behind the scenes things that goes on. And any way you look at it, I don't know Bobby well. They reached out. I ran the story, did a video about it. They said, hey, I want to come on. Let me tell my side. I found him to be very genuine, not interested in an adversarial, truly not malicious.
Mm-hmm.
I found him to be, and I definitely find you to be the same way. And it's unfortunate because it's like you guys are, I think, just neither one of you want to be in a like back and forth, or not a back and forth, but like you have such a historic role with Saliva.
Mm-hmm.
It can never be. And he's been with Saliva so long. And I'm like, man, what are your thoughts on all of this that has transpired, I guess, over the last few weeks? It's been interesting for me as a fan seeing this and being like, how will this end up?
Right. I don't, I mean, everything that has happened between me and Bobby I feel like, in my opinion, has been me responding to something that Bobby has said. Like he talked about me on Blabbermouth, and I responded to that. He talked about me being a sad man with quitter's remorse. I don't have any quitter's remorse. Like I said, the thing that, first of all, the thing that is the wellspring of my joy and my pleasure in this life comes from my faith and my wife and my children. That's number one. Now, the number two thing that is a byproduct of that love and that joy that comes from my faith and the love of my life and my children is music. And that's something that I've always been thankful and grateful to be able to share with the world. the problem that the only problem I've had with Bobby is Bobby seems to say one thing in the press and act one way in the press. He acts like victimized, like he's like I've done something to him, and that seems to be his MO. Is he does these things behind the scenes, and then when he gets in front of the cameras or gets in front of an interviewer, he acts like it's you that's doing these things. And Brian, honest to God, I'm not doing any of these things is being that he's saying that I'm doing.
And one of the things that came up in that conversation, that kind of that interview from a few weeks ago with you, was one of the points that you raised was that the current lineup of Saliva, doesn't include anyone from the OG era, and is it difficult for you? And this is something I hear from a lot of musicians, but is it difficult for you to see someone kind of singing songs that you wrote in a band that you
100 and not only singing songs that I wrote, but treating me like I'm some kind of former disgruntled employee that I don't have the right to have any kind of voice about this or anything. See, when I first came back while Wayne was alive, Bobby seemed supportive of me. He seemed like he was going to support me having my own band and me doing my own thing. And then as soon as Wayne dies, he still says in the press that he's supportive of me and there's going to be 2 Salivas or whatever. But at the same time, sends me a cease and desist saying I can't even call myself the former lead singer of Saliva. I couldn't even have the word Saliva on my poster. Like it's just ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. And like I said, he talks out both sides of his neck is what bothers me so badly. He says one thing and does another. If you'll notice, when he came on Rock Feed with you, he was talking about how I was this sad person with quitter's remorse, and then puts out a diss track about me. And I'm just like, okay, all right. I see where this is going now. So I got 2 singles coming out now that'll.
So you're responding to this.
I'm responding. Yeah. This is my.
And what are the songs called?
The first single is called Who, and the other song is called Famous, and I'm dropping them both at once.
Amazing. And so obviously you guys are kind of obviously not in a great place right now. And I wonder, do you feel like there's any possibility at some point in the future that maybe you guys could, because just having talked to both of you separately, I don't know Bobby well, but he was, I think you guys to some degree have a lot in common, but I wonder if there was ever a way, from your perspective that you think, hey, maybe we could do something. I know it's challenging from a business perspective. It sounds like he's heavily involved in the business aspect, and so I don't know. I'm just curious, like, do you think that we could ever see Josey Scott on a Saliva stage in the future in any capacity?
I really doubt that. And what I said in the last interview that was taken out of context so badly, as I said, I don't want to do a Timu version of Saliva. I meant I didn't want to cheapen that beautiful thing that we had back in 1997 to the year 2010. I didn't want to water that down. That wasn't anything personal towards the musicians that he's in a band with. He's in a band with that kid Sebastian, whose dad is Jeff LeBar, is a legend. I loved his father. I loved Cinderella growing up. I would never disrespect Sebastian like that. Also, Little Sam, their drummer, loves Sam. She's a sweetheart. Never had a problem with Sam in no kind of way. My problems and my issues have always been centered around the Bobby thing, man. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand why he's got it out for me so badly. Like I said, I feel like I've been only responding. I mean, the man sent me a cease and desist saying I couldn't use my own band name that I came up with. And we had a five member partnership back in the day that you would have needed the signatures of the other four guys to done anything with that name. Now he suddenly has the football and I can't do anything about it, can't say anything about it, and that's fine. That I'm not after his legacy or what he feels like is his tenure with Saliva. And I appreciate, everybody says, well, or not everybody, but people say, Bobby kept the Saliva name alive and blah, blah, blah. And that's great. I applaud him for that, because if you look back, Brian, when Bobby joined that band, there were 3 original band members in that band when he joined it. Actually, if you want to get technical, there was 4 because, yes, Chris Tebaldo had left before I left, but Johnny Montoya was there. He was there for the album we did with Ladies and Gentlemen on it. He systematically moved out of the way. Then Dave Novotny, who'd been our go-to guy with all our business and basically controlled everything with Saliva with the 4 brothers, he's moved out of the way. Then Paul Crosby's moved out of the way. Then that only left Wayne Sweeney, who unfortunately passed away. And I even asked him at Wayne's life celebration, I said, do you know, I said, where do we go from here, Bobby? Because I was told when I came to Wayne's life celebration, I was told Bobby's going to retire. He's going to retire his dealings with the name, and he's going to pretty much go back to Jacksonville and be with his family, which I respect that. And I was like, okay, well, since I'm coming back, I was going to do Shade Violent. I was going to do my own band. But I was told then that he was going to go back to Jacksonville and do his own thing with his family, and that he was going to retire his involvement with the Saliva name. And I thought, well, if I'm coming back, I'll just come back and I'll just pick up where he left off. I wasn't trying to take advantage of anything. I just didn't want to see my baby be neglected. That special thing that we had back in the day, and the special thing that it was, I didn't want to see that falter. And I wanted to pick up the flag and run back into battle, if that was his plans. And then that's not what he does. He replaces everybody and goes back on the road. And then I'm accused of taking advantage of the situation after Wayne's passing. That's not true at all. I loved Wayne with all of my heart. I'm sure you can tell from just meeting me and getting to know me the little bit you have tonight that I adored Wayne Sweeney. I adored all the guys in the original Saliva. I don't know these guys that he's out there with now, but the original concept of what Saliva was, that was our baby, man. We were like a gang. We were like brothers, dude, to the end, and that was something really special. We had moments on stage, Brian, that we will never get back and never be able to recreate probably in this lifetime. And I just didn't want to lose that. And I wanted to protect that because that was our version of art. And but to answer your question, it doesn't look like. And then the man puts out a diss track about me, and I'm just like, this is something rappers do, dude. This ain't something rocker guys do. So I had to in kind twice.
I love it, and I haven't heard it yet, but I am very much looking forward to seeing that. And I hope that one day maybe there's some sort of agreeable between the both of you. You have such a history with that band. He seemed like a pretty reasonable guy dealing with him, and it would be, for the fans, for the legacy of Saliva, for everything indeed, maybe one day, maybe not, who knows? But we'll all have to sit back and wait because, ladies and gentlemen, Josey Scott has 2 brand new tracks. Who and Famous sounds. Are they both diss tracks?
Yeah, I mean they're both the
Oh, my Lord.
yeah.
So buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, because it seems like it's going to get turbulent. Josey Scott coming in hot. And I want to say, man, you're a really good storyteller. You're really, this has been everything I had hoped it would be and more. Just talking to you about your career and your impact on rock music. I'll have you back anytime. And as a fan of your music and your contributions to rock, man, this has been impressive. And I'm so happy. This made my day. And I'm honored to have you, man, because you've been a part of so many crazy and amazing things. So I really appreciate you being such a great, some people go, oh, I got 10 minutes, thank you for sitting here and chopping it up with me for what feels like a couple hours. I don't know, but this is going to make an amazing episode. And I really appreciate it.
Well, like I said, I'm a fan of yours too, man. And I'm just glad to be here. I'm grateful that you had me on.
I love it. I can't wait. First show near me, I'm going to come and hang out and we're going to have an amazing night.
I love it.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much.
I'll see you.